Hey everyone, this is Angela from Fabricworks Studio. In this podcast, I wanted to discuss how we as artists balance creative time in the studio with everything else. I think that creative time in studios is a very important time for any type of artist. It's the time that you are one-on-one with your art, and you are designing your art, you're planning, you're completing it. And so that time really becomes much of a sacred time. And the problem is, how do you balance that time with everything else that needs to be done for that studio? And even if you're running your studio as a hobby or a business, there are still things that need to be done to maintain and run that studio. And I think you would all agree on that. So, for example, the everything else, I took a moment to write down some of the things that I do in Fabricworks. Mainly because I'm running it as a business, and so there's some of the things that I'm sure that you'll agree with. And then there are other things that if you're running your studio as a hobby, you'll probably say, no, I don't really do that. But I think the list is pretty much the same for most of us. So my everything else list is running a website. I run the blog, Trending and Surface Design. I run a store for the products in the store. I run these podcasts. I do exhibits throughout the year. I do several commissions for the year. I sell. I have to do product development for new things in the store and new fabric art pieces. Then I have to maintain the physical studio space. That's from maintaining the fabric closet, maintaining my sewing machines, my other equipment, make sure that my equipment is available. If I run out of things, I have to order certain things from the store. Bulk fabric, batting, backing material, there are threads, there are all kinds of things that need to be maintained. Plus I have my memberships, any involvement that I may have on committees or in certain projects, auctions. If I'm participating for a given year, I have that, which is kind of pulling on my time. And then there are my customers, and so the list really just kind of goes on and on, but these were some of the main categories that I found, in my everything else, under that everything else umbrella. And then there is my creative time. There's the actual time that I get to spend, creating the pieces, and that goes from researching them, picking the colors, selecting fabrics. If I'm designing it, I need design time for the computer. If I'm doing those digital surface designs, that takes time. There's also archiving the images, as part of my creative time, I'm developing new ideas, new techniques that I like to incorporate, into my current work. So I need time to learn those things. I need time to work with new materials. And, all of this is part of my creative time. And so creative time in any studio is a very sacred time. It's a time when you get to really connect with your art, but it's a time when you really need to have no distractions, right? And it's also a time that you really want to have the consistency there, because there's nothing worse than, being able to go into your studio on one day and then you can't get back into the studio for a good 20 or 30 days. You kind of lose that momentum and you lose the consistency in the work. That happened to me really early on, when I wasn't as aware as to how important it is to really preserve that creative time. So I would kind of make quilts and then get caught up in doing everything else. And I would have these quilts to finish, and I would come back to finish it, and I would forget how to finish it. I would actually forget how to finish it. And it was really kind of, when I did that a couple of times, I realized, I said, oh, wow, I'm not being consistent. I don't have the consistency, and with consistency, in order to achieve that, you need repetition, right? And in order to repeat something, you have to have the time to do it. And so it wasn't until I realized that I said to myself, okay, it's a delicate balancing act. There are a lot of things out there that I can do with this studio. As an artist, there are a lot of different activities that you can do. And I just realized that I needed to do those things, but at the same time, I had to find ways that would allow me the creative time that I needed to grow as an artist. And so over the years, I really came to develop some things that work for me. And it's just some basic guidelines that I use in the studio, which I think have really elevated Fabric Works to the next level, that I wanted it to go to. And they've certainly helped me as an artist. I feel like I express myself better through my art. I learn and pick up new techniques. I'm not as stressed in the studio trying to keep up with everything. And I just feel like they've really been a godsend to me. Now, this balancing act, let me say, before I talk about what my balancing act is and how I do it, I think that it's unique to each person. I think that there are many different ways that artists use, to balance their creative time with everything else. I also think that it depends on your personality. I see artists, for example, who really seem to be all over the place. They do a little bit of everything. You see people who, they'll produce some work, and then you see them in the social sphere online. I see them blogging, and I see them doing interviews, and they're doing videos, and they're doing all kinds of things. I don't see as much new work being produced, but I think that works for them. And I think that, these artists are doing, what they feel really brings them joy in their work. And I think they do it really well. And on the other end of that, I see artists I know artists who are very isolated. Like they spend most of their time in the studio creating. And, they'll come out and they'll sell their work. They have a store or whatever, and they'll sell. But they really don't get involved. They're not in any, of the clubs. And they just work in the studio. And that's, that works for them. So I really feel like the balancing act that you come up with, it really is dependent on your own personality, how you like to work, and how you view your personality as an artist in relation to running your studio. And I think it's a very individualized thing. But with this podcast, I really just wanted to share with you some of the things that have really worked for me and have worked to, bring Fabric Works to the next level. So for me, the first thing that comes to my mind, and it's something that I think about all the time, I refer to it as structured play. So it's a concept that I developed where I allow myself structured play in the studio. So when I walk into the studio, it is this beautiful, soulful, playful, whimsical place with structure. Just like when we were little kids, you go out and you play and you play all day, and then your mom comes and comes to the window and she calls you, it's time to come in now. Okay, now we have to come in and eat dinner. And there's a structure there, so you're allowed to go crazy and enjoy yourself, but there's also these boundaries that are there, but they're there not to restrict you and not to have it where you feel creatively restricted, but they're there really for your safety. And so that's kind of how I feel in my studio under the structured play notion. The second thing that I like to do, and I call it seasons of work. I consider Fabric Work Studio as a seasonal studio, meaning that many of the activities that I do in there in the studio are seasonal. So I don't do them all year round. And that's the way that it's set up in the studio. And again, that's part of that's part of this whole structured play idea. So for example, when I'm designing new work, I don't do that all year round, right? There's only a set time that I will do that throughout the year. When I'm developing new products, I don't put that burden on myself all year round. If I'm accepting commissions, I don't accept commissions all year round. There has to be a little bit of a break there. Now, there are some things that I do all year round. I maintain my website, I maintain the studio, I maintain the blog. The store is pretty much open. I think I have 1 or 2 vacations in there. For example, these podcasts. It's not something that I've agreed to do all year round, because I know that, hey, I can do the podcast as a series for a couple of months, and then I can put them online and let people enjoy them all year round. But I'm not actually creating them all year round because I'm doing other things. And so there is a season to the work. And I really like to base it on the calendar year, and then I do it monthly from there. So most of the things that I do in the studio, whether it's designing or it's, if I'm making new products, if I'm learning new things, I'll give myself a month, at least a month. Certain projects and things have 1 month, and then other things will have maybe, 4 months. Now, for example, when I'm learning new things, I refer to that as my summer studio. And so sometimes you'll hear me say, hey, I'm in a summer studio now. And my summer studio runs a 4-month period through the year. It's from May until August. And it's the summertime. It's a lull period for my day job. And so I know that I have extra time to do things. And so that's when I, may take a class. I try different things. I'm experimenting with different materials. I'm working on legacy projects. I like to go to my older projects and revamp them. That's one of the things I love to do. I love to go to my old designs. I'll go to an old design of a quilt that I made 5-6 years ago, and then just revisit that and revamp that. But these are activities that I leave for my summer studio. In terms of learning new things, I'm not the type to take classes all year round. I know, I know quite a few people actually that take classes online and offline all year round, and that's all they do. They learn new things all year round, and the class has a project, so they do the project. But that's it. And then they just move on to the next class. And so for me, that doesn't work. For me, that doesn't work. I need to spend time on a technique that I'm learning. If I'm learning something new, I need a couple of months on it, to be honest, because what I like to do is learn it. And then I'll do the project. And then I like to do, I would say, a couple of other projects on my own with it. And then I like to put my own spin on it, so I need time to do that. And so in my summer studio, I would say I would learn probably, I would say no more than two things, no more than two new techniques at a time. And then that gives me plenty of time to really ingrain it in what I'm doing and try to incorporate it into my current work, because that's always what I'm looking to do is, how can I bring this into my current work, and how can I put my voice onto it, and how can I put the Fabric Works studio spin on this technique, and so the seasonal aspect of Fabric Works has been very important for me, and it kind of keeps me sane, so I know also, for example, if there's something that comes up that I want to learn about, then I save it. If there's something in the midst of the year that comes up and it's like, oh, I want to really try this, then what I'll do is I'll write it down and then I save it. And so when my next summer studio comes, I know, okay, great, I can jump right into this thing. And that's the wonderful part about planning a summer studio, is because you really always know. You'll have a list of things that you want to try and you want to learn. And so the next summer studios are planned out. So for example, my summer studio that I'm in now, I already know topics and things that I want to do for the next two summer studios. They're already filled up. So it's like my own class, right, that I offer for myself. So it's a great way to do it. And then the last thing that I do is I prioritize according to my yearly plan. I prioritize my activities, especially the ones in that everything else area. I prioritize according to the yearly plan. Okay, so anything that is done, if I'm looking at, websites or stores or anything to do on the blog, if there are events that come up, new products, anything that comes up that is going to take time away from my creative time, from the time that I've designated to create the art, then I really want to look at it and I really want to prioritize and say, well, okay, is this something that is in, that was really part of my vision for the studio this year? And basically what I do is similar to what you would do with any business, is you have a master planning session, right? And so at the end of the year, I kind of sit down, and these are activities that I do in December and January. I kind of sit down, and I'll talk more about this in a future podcast, because there's a spreadsheet that I use that's very helpful. It's very simple. But I basically ask myself some general questions about my mission statement for the studio, and where do I see the studio in a year. And so throughout the year, what's great about that is it really keeps me on track and it helps me to focus. And so when something comes up and it's not really part of the vision that I had for the studio, then I feel very comfortable in saying no, that, it's just not the right fit for me right now, and that's usually how I will put it, because I do get, there may be several offers that I have, some things for commissions. I just got a request for a public art commission, and it was very interesting. I thought, this would be really neat. And I thought, it's just not quite right for me right now. It certainly might be something I table and do in the future, but I was very, very comfortable in just saying, no, I don't think I want to, do that right now. I can't handle that in my schedule right now. And, it's things like that that really, it just puts those safe boundaries there, and I find that it really keeps me very sane in the studio and able to do the things that I need to do for that year. So that master planning for me, I do it every year. Some people do, certainly you could do a 10-year, master plan schedule of where you want your studio to be. Where do you want to be in 10 years, I don't do it out that far, but I have done, for example, a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 2-year plan, and a 1-year plan. And so it's the 1-year plan that really, really keeps me on track throughout the whole year. And I constantly refer to it. I refer to it every quarter. At the end of every quarter, I will bring up that spreadsheet and I look at it and I just, say, hey, okay, have I been doing this? Have I been doing that? And really by half of the year, I've fulfilled quite a few things on that little list there. So it works out really well. But to recap, I was just sharing some ways that I use to balance the creative time that I have in Fabricworks Studio with everything else. And so one of the ideas that I use, or the notions that I use, is structured play. And I really consider this to run throughout the year, but it's a way that provides me structure in this playful, creative environment. It's very important for me. And then I have the seasons of work, what I call the seasons of work, because I have a seasonal studio. So I allot certain time frames throughout the year for doing certain activities. So I have a time for designing, a time for product development, a time for commissions, a time for learning new things, which is my summer studio. And then finally, I prioritize activities and any opportunities that come my way. I prioritize them according to my yearly plan. And so I sit down at the end of the year and I make a yearly plan or a vision. What is my vision for the studio for this coming year? And these are some of the things that have really been very helpful to me for the last couple of years. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast session. Again, this is Angela from Fabricworks Studio. Feel free to visit my website at www.fabricworksstudio.com, and that's all one word. And also check out my blog, which is at Trending in Surface Design, which is www.trendinginsurfacedesign.com. Thank you, and goodbye for now.